It was still in the dawn of time, when people revered the eternal great goddess who bore many names. The oldest was Eurynome, she who wanders everywhere, the first creator. She emerged naked from chaos, and dancing brought all things into being. Taking the form of a dove upon the waves, she who wanders everywhere laid the egg of the universe, and from it hatched all that exists. The sun, the moon, the stars, and the earth with its mountains, rivers, and trees. The great goddess ordered the year into 13 months, divided into 2 seasons by the summer and winter solstices. The names they bore were Fallow and Carpo, bloom and harvest. She gifted the calendar to the first humans long before the father of time, Kronos, began devouring his children.
Hello, enthusiasts of finds, archaeology, history, good wine, beautiful women, fresh pork fat, and plum compote. We've prepared a brand new episode of Show Me a Find. Today, we're presenting an incredible artifact. It dates back to the earliest history of the Bulgarian lands and is truly perplexing. This find was discovered in a deliberately burned dwelling at the prehistoric settlement in the Chardako area, near the village of Slatino, Kustendil region. The object dates to the early 5th millennium BCE. That means, if we do the math, we're about to show you a discovery from human history that is a respectable 7,000 years old. The Slatino clay sanctuary model is rectangular in shape and can be likened to an iron for pressing clothes. Not the modern electric irons your mothers use, but more like the ones your grandmothers heated on the stove before ironing. The object could also be compared to a small house with unusual decorations. In front of the opening on the frontal side, there is a narrow platform, and anthropomorphic figures are modeled on the 4 corners of the roof. The object is adorned with numerous incised, punctured, and relief ornaments, similar to those observed on most artifacts of this type found at archaeological sites dating to the Chalcolithic era. What makes this model unique is the presence of a zoomorphic handle, interpreted as a snake, but also as a phallus. This reminds us of the old Bulgarian maxim, "Draw a phallus on the wall and let's run." This handle allows the model to be flipped onto its back, revealing a panel depicted on its underside. Over the years, many similar models have been discovered, but the Slatino artifact stands out due to the distinctive panel displayed on its reverse side. The distinctive structure, decorative ornamentation, and the panel depicted on the artifact quickly transformed the Slatino sanctuary model into a subject of calendrical interpretations and hypotheses.
Whoa!
While the panel in question could have simply been a decorative element, the individual compartments contain incisions with varying sequences. This arrangement of elements gives the impression of a counting system being used. Naturally, researchers began to ask, what was the purpose of this object, and what does the panel's content represent? Could it be a record of rituals, a calendrical system, or something entirely different? the mystery continues to intrigue scholars, shedding light on the advanced conceptual thinking of the people from the Chalcolithic era. You might already be asking yourself, what could possibly be so unique about some panel depicting a chart on an almost primitive clay object, created long before anyone could use a computer or any other modern technological marvel? Until quite recently, human prehistory, for us modern Homo sapiens, was often seen as a time devoid of deep knowledge about the world and the universe. Our distant ancestors were either viewed as semi-savages, struggling to survive against the forces of nature, or as beings visited by aliens who benevolently gifted them with some higher knowledge.
I come in peace, savages of the earth. I bring you knowledge.
However, the discovery of artifacts like the sanctuary model from Slatino directly challenges these notions. When we consider that the construction of the megalithic temples on the island of Malta, Stonehenge, and the Egyptian pyramids is not so distant in time from the creation of the Slatino sanctuary model, it prompts us to rethink whether our ancestors were ever truly prehistoric savages. The answer to this question is most likely a resounding no. A traceological analysis of the artifact has revealed that the direction for interpreting the chart panel follows a columnar approach, from top to bottom and left to right. This study determined the orientation of the incised lines and marks within the individual cells of the depicted chart. Such findings further emphasize that our prehistoric ancestors may have been far more advanced in their understanding of the world and capable of abstract thought than we have traditionally given them credit for. Let us now examine the content of this remarkable chart. The first, third, and fifth columns contain a total of 30 empty squares, 12 of which are marked with red ochre. This color has been established as associated with the feminine deity of prehistory, known as the Great Mother Goddess. These are represented as red dots on the panel. The second, fourth, and sixth columns are occupied by 27 squares filled with vertical and horizontal lines. Additionally, 3 empty squares are marked in gray. According to the artifact's discoverer, Bulgarian archaeologist Stefan Chohagiev, the chart represents a lunar calendar, marking 30 days and spanning 12 months. Chohagiev interprets the first square marked with red ochre, located at the top left of the panel, as the start of the year, which began around December 22. He also does not rule out the possibility that the object served as a perpetual calendar, intended to record astronomical knowledge for future generations. This fascinating interpretation highlights the advanced understanding of time and celestial phenomena possessed by our prehistoric ancestors, offering yet another glimpse into their sophisticated worldview. Chohagiev's hypothesis is undoubtedly intriguing, but it remains practically unprovable due to the lack of comparable artifacts or written sources from the era to serve as a basis for comparative analysis. A more simplistic interpretation might suggest the chart was used as a counting system, perhaps for livestock. However, basic logic dismisses such a profane application for an object of such complexity. Shortly after Stefan Chohagiev published the findings, Professor Vasil Nikolov proposed his own interpretation. He hypothesized that the Slatino sanctuary model likely represents a schematic calendar outlining periods of agricultural activity related to grain cultivation, soil management, and even the menstrual cycles of women. Nikolov identifies the beginning of the year in this calendar as the spring equinox. According to his interpretation, the months in the panel are structured as follows. The first 3 months correspond to the period from April to June. time of tending to the new harvest and engaging in productive labor. The next 5 months span from July to November, covering the harvest season, the collection of crops, and preparations for winter. The final 4 months represent winter, from December to March. This interpretation connects the artifact to the rhythms of agricultural and social life, presenting an alternative perspective that sees the chart as a reflection of early human interaction with nature's cycles and fertility. Another researcher, the late Bulgarian archaeologist Nikolai Dermendiev, conducted a detailed archaeoastronomical analysis of the Slatino sanctuary clay model in an attempt to interpret the calendar chart panel. Dermendiev agreed with Professor Vasil Nikolov's hypothesis regarding the start of the calendar year, considering it more plausible. He cited not only the division of the year into 3 seasons based on agricultural activities, but also the similarity to the ancient Egyptian civil calendar, which also had 3 seasons. This calendar consisted of 12 months of 30 days each, with 5 additional days called epagomenal. However, it's essential to note that this coincidence might be accidental, and there is no confirmation that the panel chart on the Slatino model represents such a calendar scheme. Nikolov's proposition remains a hypothesis. Dermendiev drew numerous parallels with later-known calendar systems, but his analysis remains unproven due to the inability to compare it with similar finds from the same period. At this stage, the evidentiary basis is, at best, non-existent. Dermendiev even speculated that the calendar panel might be a reproduction of a system compiled and used over hundreds or even thousands of years by the prehistoric culture that created it. This suggestion verges on overinterpretation, a tendency not unfamiliar in the Balkan approaches to archaeology and history. At this stage, the only statement that can be made with a high degree of certainty is that the depicted chart is not merely a decorative element of the object. However, the precise interpretation of its content remains a mystery to science. Notably, several rock cult places are located near the prehistoric settlement of Slatino, where both the summer and winter solstices, as well as the spring and autumn equinoxes, can be observed. Despite their significance, these sites remain completely unexplored by Bulgarian archaeologists, aside from the damage inflicted by Luthers. Another intriguing artifact from the Slatino settlement is a biconical spindle whorl made of clay, featuring the characteristic engraved decoration of its era. The presumed astronomical significance of this object was first introduced at the international conference Oxford IV, held in Stara Zagora, Bulgaria, in the early 1990s. A detailed analysis followed 9 years later, conducted by archaeoastronomers Veselina and Dimitar Kolevi, alongside the artifact's discoverer, Stefan Chohadjiev. According to their research, one side of the spindle whorl, round its central hole, bears an image of a trapezium with a tail, reminiscent of the constellation Ursa Major. The opposite side features a depiction of a Labris, double axe, whose configuration resembles the constellation Cygnus and the lower sector of Cepheus. The meticulous craftsmanship and intricate ornamentation of both the sanctuary model and the clay spindle whorl from Slatino highlight their profound significance to the community that created them. Prehistoric specialists widely acknowledge that spinning itself carried an important ritual dimension. The evident interest in the calendar and celestial positions, possibly encoded in these two objects, is unlikely to be coincidental. On the contrary, they may represent an unexpectedly sophisticated attempt to depict the visible celestial sphere, capturing its distinctive forms and dynamic movements. Thus, the chart depicted on the model can be interpreted as evidence of an existing calendar system, one of remarkable complexity, closely linked to the movement of celestial bodies. The accurate mathematical locations of the depicted constellations on the spindle whorl suggest a pre-existing knowledge of the azimuth of the celestial sphere. For these calculations to be correct, knowledge about the shape of the Earth and the hemispherical celestial vault was also necessary. It is evident that such knowledge was available in the Chalcolithic age, and prehistoric people applied it. The unexpectedly advanced astronomical knowledge from this time period indicates that planimetry and mathematics were not terra incognita for them. This leads us to the realization that this same individual was aware of the measure we later referred to as the number pi. It is astonishing that the small clay spindle whorl projects the celestial dome, proportionally reduced thanks to the knowledge of the number pi. Here, we remind you that pi is a mathematical constant representing the ratio between the circumference of a circle and its diameter, commonly used in mathematics, physics, and engineering. This formulation, in its current form, was clarified several millennia after the Chalcolithic age. These findings open our eyes to the fact that advanced knowledge of the world and astronomical phenomena already existed during that age. Following the discovery of sites like Göbekli Tepe and Karahan Tepe in Turkey, there is no doubt that prehistoric humans were capable of understanding significantly complex mathematical concepts and had an exceptionally good grasp of the phenomena in their surrounding world. During the communism era in Eastern Europe, modern Marxist historiography viewed prehistoric humans through the lens of propaganda paradigms and labeled them as primitive communists from the primitive communal system. The historical truth of those years taught us that this individual, due to the absence of a class enemy and the presence of private property, had access to all societal goods while heroically struggling for survival at the dawn of time. Struggle was very important during those socialist years in Eastern Europe. People fought for a new life, just as comrades from USSR fought, but more heroically than the other Eastern Europeans. There was a yearning for new feats. However, outside of this propaganda cliché, the scientific and technological progress whose achievements were idolized in the Eastern European societies that anticipated a bright future could hardly be associated with the Marxist primitive communist. What kind of slogans might have been written and circulated if communist propaganda machine had known that the prehistoric primitive communist was ahead of the curve in scientific and technological progress? It is frightening to even imagine. Nowadays, we have realized that the very existence of numerous finds dating back to the Chalcolithic age, discovered at sites in Bulgaria, attests to the rich scientific knowledge of this first European communities that formed the civilization of Old Europe, as Maria Gimbutas named it. It is incredibly amusing that the understanding of prehistoric people regarding astronomy and mathematics was more than exceptionally good, while their modern descendants often turn to Google for everything, with some genuinely believing that the Earth is flat. In conclusion, we can say that deciphering the chart panel depicted on the model from Slatino is still pending. The late Bulgarian archaeologist Nikolai Dermenziev expressed his belief that the depicted calendar is a copy of an actively used eternal calendar by prehistoric communities during the Chalcolithic age. Whether there are other copies of this tool and whether the Earth conceals more similar finds will be answered only by future research. In his analysis of the model, Dermenziev shares that, in his opinion, the prehistoric community that created this object consisted of curious and inventive people who managed without the aid of a numerical system. According to him, the creation of this artifact was the work of skilled mathematicians and astronomers who utilized the method of multiplication with finite additions and we're keenly interested in the movements of the sun, moon, planets, and stars. We can only add that a thorough, detailed study of many archaeological sites dating from the prehistory in Bulgaria awaits its brighter future. Who knows? Perhaps the researcher who will decipher the chart depicted on the model from Slatino is among you watching this video right now. Time will tell. You can see that artifact and a large part of the artifacts uncovered by Stefan Chohagiev's team during the excavations of the prehistoric settlement displayed at the Regional Historical Museum of Kustendil. The model is number 13 in the museum exhibition dedicated to the prehistory of the region. We hope that with this episode of Show Me a Find, you learned something new and intriguing. Subscribe to our channel if you like the content we create. It will be an honor for us to have you as our viewers. If you want to continue discovering fascinating facts about similar archaeological finds, please leave us your comment so we can surprise you with even more new episodes. Don't forget to click on the bell to be notified about the new content we upload. You can also follow us on Instagram and TikTok. Goodbye, until the next find.